All right, Marcel, this is a Bible, right? We like the Bible, right? We believe the Bible, right? How many of you have read the Bible and hit certain points, you're like, I have no idea what to do with that. I know it's true, but my head just exploded. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that part of the Bible. Have you ever had that? You ever had that? Peter, a guy who was discipled by Jesus and wrote a couple books of the Bible, he says that parts are, quote, hard to understand. Okay, we hit one today. It's on slavery. Ephesians 6, 5 through 9. We tend to go through books of the Bible. This is week 16 in our Who Do You Think You Are series. We're looking at I Am Rewarded, and Paul talks about slavery. I still remember as a new Christian, I was in college, just met Jesus, just started reading the Bible. I had a professor who was not a Christian, but his brother was a Christian missionary, and he studied the Bible a lot just to out-argue and annoy his brother. Not the most noble motive for Bible study. And he liked to blow up evangelicals emotionally in class. That was his favorite hobby. So I didn't know this, and he would use all of his biblical knowledge to argue against Christianity in the Bible. So I remember sitting in a class, and he said something to the effect of, so anybody here believe the Bible? I'm a brand new Christian. Yeah, State College. Yeah, I believe. But he's like, so you believe in slavery? I was like, oh, let me get my hand down. I didn't know this was a two-part question. He's like, because the Bible, it supports slavery. I was like, oh, I just started reading. I apparently have not gotten to that part. I should now go study. And I didn't know what to do. So I started studying. Well, the Bible does talk about slavery. What does it say about slavery? Is God a God who endorses slavery or opposes slavery? And what do we do with this big issue? Well, that's where we find ourselves today. Paul's writing a letter to a church. He himself is not a free man. He's a man who is in prison. And he's writing a letter to a church that he planted in a city called Ephesus. And in that church, there were masters and slaves. So you got to see this. They're sitting together, maybe, in the church, and then they get a letter where Paul says, here's what Christian slaves should do and not do. Here's what Christian masters should do and not do. Can you imagine how awkward it was in that service? It's going to be that awkward today, okay? Just talking about slavery seems awkward, right? Is it just me? Do you feel awkward? I do. And I thank you for joining me in the awkwardness. So let us open the Bible. Let us not have a superficial misunderstanding of it. Let us have a deep consideration of it to see what God might mean when he speaks to slaves and masters. So Ephesians 6, 5 through 9, we'll read it together. Bondservants, some of your translations will say slaves. Obey your earthly masters with fear and trembling, with a sincere heart, as you would Christ, not by the way of eye service, as people pleasers, but as bondservants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, rendering service with a good will as to the Lord and not to man, knowing that whatever good anyone does, this he will receive back from the Lord, whether he is a bondservant or slave or is free. Masters, do the same to them and stop your threatening, knowing that he, that is Jesus, who is both their master and yours, is in heaven and that there is no partiality with him. Here we are, dealing with slaves and masters. And immediately what happens as soon as we hear that word, slavery, we immediately import into it slavery as was practiced in the United States of America. But, might I remind you, he's speaking to those who were part of the Roman Empire roughly 2,000 years, nearly 2,000 years, before the United States of America even became a nation. And before it became a nation that ever practiced slavery. And so, what we're looking at is perhaps not the same meaning in the Roman Empire as is meant in American history. So let me just be clear up front, very clear. I need to thread the needle on this. I believe, the Bible teaches, I'm convinced, that slavery as was practiced in the United States of America is ungodly, it's unholy, and it's unjust. Okay? And I'll get to my reasons why in a moment. But we need to be careful not to take a word and then pour into it a lot of meaning that they wouldn't have originally had in their context. We're separated by cultures.